Ira Beck, whose fortune bought him the kind of life others only dreamed of, the high-rise penthouse, the tailored suits, the endless calendar of business meetings and galas. Yet, amidst the shimmering cityscape and boardroom victories, Ira remained, tethered to earth by one persistent thread, his engagement to Jemma Whitman, a woman from his own world of wealth and ambition. Jemma was radiant and poised, always at Ira's side for the photo opportunities and public events. To onlookers, they were flawless, the golden couple, envied and admired, but beneath her polished grace was a restlessness. She knew the sort of man Ira was, driven, absorbed, forever in pursuit of the next conquest, even if it meant neglecting the heart she'd promised to cherish. Olivia, Ira's younger sister, had seen through the illusion. She had heard the rumors. Over coffee in the private library, she'd cautioned him gently, "Don't invest your heart too deeply, Ira, not until you're sure she's worthy of it." Her words carried the weight of intuition sharpened by love, but Ira believed his sister was being overly protective. He had built his empire on certainty, and he clung to the belief that Jemma's loyalty was as steady as his balance sheets. The truth was, for months, Jemma had sought her own outlets in the arms of other men, filling the void left by Ira's relentless schedule. What began as whispers at cocktail parties soon became the unspoken secret of their circle, furtive glances, knowing smirks, and silences heavy with speculation. But Ira, insulated by pride and blinded by trust, remained oblivious. Until one luminous evening, fate intervened. The ballroom glittered that night, crystal chandeliers scattering light like diamonds across silk gowns and polished shoes. Ira moved through the crowd with practiced ease, handshakes, measured laughter, the steady rhythm of a man in command of his world. His empire, his name, his fiancée, all perfectly aligned, or so he thought. Then his gaze caught hers. Jemma stood near the terrace, radiant in a sapphire gown, her laughter rising above the hum of conversation. At her side was a man Ira had never seen before, a tall figure in an impeccably cut suit, confidence radiating from every gesture. Ira's chest tightened as the stranger reached for Jemma's hand, bowing slightly before pressing his lips to her fingers, resting his hand on the small of her back. It should have been nothing, an empty gesture of charm. But Jemma didn't pull away. She smiled, not the rehearsed smile she reserved for photographers, not the polite smile she wore at charity galas. This was different. This was unguarded, real. She leaned closer, her eyes alight, and the sound of her laughter, free, melodic, intimate, cut Ira to the bone. The moment did not go unnoticed by reporters in the room. Cameras flashed in quick succession, their lenses hungry for scandal. Conversations faltered, heads turned. The glittering summit transformed into a theater of betrayal, with Ira as the unwilling centerpiece. For the first time in years, his composure slipped. The floor beneath him felt unsteady, the glass of champagne in his hand suddenly heavy and meaningless. Pride urged him to stride across the room, to reclaim her with the force of authority that had won him every boardroom battle. But the image of her smile, the one that had not been his for so long, rooted him to the spot. The scandal spread like fire through dry grass. By the time the evening ended, whispers had hardened into truths, and Ira Beck's perfect facade had cracked. The man whose name commanded respect now carried the quiet, merciless stain of humiliation. That night, as the city lights burned outside his penthouse windows, Ira, the man no longer unshakable. For the first time, he was not the victor, but the betrayed. The city never slept, but that night Ira Beck's penthouse felt like a mausoleum. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, jacket abandoned across the sofa, tie undone, staring at the sprawl of lights that blurred into a sea of gold and white. For years, those lights had meant victory. They had represented his empire, his reach, his influence, his proof that the sacrifices were worth it. But now, the glow only reminded him of the eyes that had witnessed his humiliation. His jaw tightened. The cameras had been merciless. Tomorrow's headlines would not speak of his latest business triumph, but of Jemma Whitman's betrayal, immortalized in stolen photographs. He poured himself a drink, the clink of ice shattering the silence. Whiskey burned its way down his throat, but it did nothing to ease the weight pressing on his chest. He replayed the scene in the ballroom over and over, each detail sharpening like glass. Jemma's laughter, the way she leaned into the stranger's touch, the flicker of joy in her eyes that had been absent when she looked at him. A sharp knock at the door broke the spiral. Only one person would come unannounced at this hour, Olivia. She swept inside without waiting for his invitation, her dark hair pulled back, her expression both furious and worried. "Ira," she said softly, as though she feared he might break. Her gaze swept over the untouched half-empty glass in his hand. The exhaustion etched into his face. "I saw the photographs." He didn't answer, only returned to the window. Olivia crossed the room and set her hand on his arm. "I warned you," she whispered. "I told you she wasn't—" "Don't." His voice was quiet, but edged, with steel. "Don't say it. Not tonight." For once, Olivia did not argue. She simply stood beside him, her reflection caught in the glass next to his. Two siblings, both watching the city, both trying to hold back words that would only deepen the wound. Finally, Ira spoke. "Do you know what I felt tonight? Not anger, not even jealousy, just disbelief. As if everything I thought I understood about my life was a lie written in someone else's hand." He exhaled slowly, a bitter smile curving his lips. "And the worst part? I didn't see it coming. Me, the man who anticipates every move before it's made." Olivia turned to face him fully. "You're human, Ira. You built an empire by uncalculating risk, but love isn't numbers on a page, it's trust. And she abused that trust." Her words landed with a weight heavier than the drink in his hand. Trust. He had trusted Jemma the way he trusted contracts and signatures, believing loyalty could be measured in appearances, in shared calendars, in whispered assurances. But trust, he realized now, was a far more dangerous gamble. "I can't undo tonight," Ira said at last. "But I won't let it define me. If she wanted to tear me down, she'll find I'm not so easily destroyed." Olivia's eyes softened. "Then rebuild, Ira. But this time, don't rebuild for appearances. Rebuild for yourself." He set his glass aside and straightened, pulling the tie from his neck completely. The city was still burning beyond the windows, vibrant and unyielding. Somewhere in that vast expanse, whispers of scandal already spread, but he felt a strange clarity cutting through the haze of betrayal. For the first time in years, Ira Beck wasn't thinking about his next business deal. He was thinking about survival, reinvention, and what it meant to start again when the world had already written its verdict. Jemma Whitman had always believed she could walk a tightrope without falling. For years, she'd balanced her role as Ira Beck's fiancée with her hunger for something more, something thrilling, something that made her feel alive rather than merely admired. To the outside world, she was perfect. A polished jewel at Ira's side, the picture of elegance. But perfection, she thought, was suffocating. Ira gave her security, yes. His empire wrapped her in designer gowns, chauffeured cars, and invitations to the kind of events others would kill to attend. Yet Ira himself, he was distant, more in love with his spreadsheets and strategies than with her laughter. She had grown tired of waiting for him to look at her the way he looked at quarterly reports, so she sought out her own indulgences. At first, they were discreet, weekend escapes hidden in shadows, stolen hours in hotels where no cameras followed. The men were different, but the thrill was the same. a reminder that she was still wanted, still desired, not just a trophy for Ira's empire. She told herself she was careful, that Ira's pride would blind him to anything that didn't fit, his vision of control. And for a while she was right, but somewhere along the way carelessness slipped in. Maybe it was arrogance, maybe it was exhaustion from pretending. That night at the summit, she hadn't planned to be reckless. She hadn't planned for champagne to dull her instincts or for the man at her side. John Voss, charming and magnetic, in a way Ira never was, to touch her hand in full view of the crowd. She certainly hadn't planned to smile like that, to let joy spill out of her so freely. When the cameras flashed, a jolt of panic had pierced through the haze, but it was fleeting. Even as the whispers began, Jemma felt a dangerous exhilaration. For once, she wasn't a perfect accessory. She was the story. The risk made her blood sing. Still, beneath the thrill, a darker truth coiled. She had underestimated Ira. She thought his pride would shield him, that he would dismiss rumors as baseless noise. But the look she'd caught in his eyes across the ballroom, the raw disbelief, told her she had gone too far. And Jemma Whitman, for all her calculated bravado, had no plan for what came after breaking the man who had given her everything. That night, long after Olivia had left and the city had quieted to a restless hum, Ira Beck stood alone in his study, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was steady, precise, the same tone he used when closing multi-million-dollar deals. "I want a full investigation. Every detail, every name, every receipt by morning." The man on the other end, a trusted private operative whose discretion had been purchased years ago, didn't hesitate. Consider it done. For Ira, sleep was a stranger. He sat in silence, watching the horizon bleed into dawn, his mind sharpening like a blade. Betrayal had wounded him. By the time sunlight spilled across the skyline, Ira had resolved one thing: he would not allow this scandal to define him. Damage control would begin at once. When he arrived at his office, his staff moved briskly, phones pressed to ears, PR, statements drafted, alliances reinforced. Ira ignored their curious glances. His focus was on the envelope waiting on his desk. The report, he read in silence, page after page, cataloguing Jemma's indiscretions, names of men, dates, whispered transactions, even photographs that stripped away any last trace of denial. With each revelation, Ira's jaw hardened, his pride transforming into a cold, calculated determination. If Jemma had believed she could humiliate him without consequence, she would soon learn otherwise. Meanwhile, across town, Jemma paced the polished floors of her townhouse, hands trembling as her phone vibrated with call after call. Her publicist's voice had been sharp with urgency. "The photos are everywhere. We need a statement, Jemma, now." But Jemma couldn't think clearly. Panic clawed at her chest. She'd thrived on risk, but she'd never imagined the fallout would be this swift, this consuming. Invitations were already being rescinded. Social media fed on her name like vultures, dissecting every frame of her smile beside John Voss. She pressed a hand to her temple, rehearsing excuses in her mind. Perhaps she could spin the story, call it a misunderstanding, a friendly encounter. But deep down, she knew the truth was too blatant to hide. And Ira, she realized with a sickening twist in her stomach, was not the sort of man who forgave. Every step she took echoed her mistake. For the first time, Jemma Whitman felt something foreign: fear. The walls of his empire were closing in. Even after reading the damning report on Jemma, Ira couldn't focus on strategy or spin. His staff wanted statements, lawyers wanted answers, and the world wanted to see him bleed. But Ira Beck, for all his steel, felt suffocated. So he left. No driver, no entourage, just him walking aimlessly through the park, his polished shoes crunching against gravel paths. The evening air was crisp. He loosened his collar tilted his head back toward the fading sky, and wondered how everything had unraveled so quickly. That was when he heard her. "Would you like a cookie, mister? My mom makes the best ones." He blinked down at a little girl with curly brown hair tied in pigtails, no older than 4. She clutched a napkin-wrapped cookie in one hand and reached for him with the other, as though they were already friends. Before he could respond, she tugged at his hand, her small fingers gripping his with surprising determination. "Ella, sweetheart, don't bother him." The voice belonged to a woman kneeling beside a picnic blanket, her phone pressed between shoulder and ear as she unpacked containers of food. She turned just as Ella dragged Ira toward her. The phone slipped from her grasp, and her eyes widened, in shock. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. She's very friendly. It's all right," Ira said quickly, surprising himself with the gentleness in his voice. He glanced down at the eager child holding tightly to him. "Actually, I could use a friend right about now." The woman studied him carefully, clearly torn between embarrassment and relief. "Well, we're about to have dinner. If you haven't eaten, you're welcome to join us. I'm Helena, by the way." For reasons he couldn't explain, Ira nodded. Minutes later, he was seated on the blanket with them, a paper plate in hand. The food was simple: roast chicken, pasta salad, cookies Ella insisted he try, but it was warm and unpretentious, a stark contrast to the sterile perfection of catered galas. Conversation flowed easily. Helena was kind but cautious, answering his questions politely, while Ella chattered on about her favorite colors and the park's carousel. Ira found himself smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in weeks. For an hour, he wasn't Ira Beck, the betrayed businessman. He was simply a man sharing a meal with a mother and her daughter. When Helena began packing their things, Ella's laughter rang out as she skipped across the grass. Then, without warning, her body stiffened. She collapsed onto the blanket, her small frame convulsing violently. "Ella!" Helena cried, dropping everything to cradle her daughter. Panic filled her voice as she scrambled for her phone. "She hasn't had one in a month. Oh God, not again!" Ira's chest tightened as he knelt beside them, instinct taking over. "How can I help? We need to get her to a hospital now." Together, they rushed to the nearest emergency room. Helena clung to her daughter, her face pale with terror, while Ira stayed close, steadying her through the chaos of intake forms and flashing monitors. He didn't know why he remained. He could have walked away, returned to his fortress of glass and steel, but something inside him refused to leave. Hours later, a weary doctor emerged. Helena stood, clutching Ira's arm for support. "The seizures are worsening," the doctor said gravely. "Her epilepsy is more severe than we hoped. Surgery will likely be necessary." Helena's knees nearly buckled, tears filling her eyes. Ira caught her before she fell, his hand firm at her elbow. In that moment, he felt a clarity he hadn't expected. His own betrayal, his shattered pride, it all seemed small compared to the helplessness of a mother fighting for her child. Ella lay in recovery. Ira Beck stayed. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business, betrayal, or his own survival. He was thinking about a child's fragile heartbeat and the strength of the woman who refused to break beside her. And though he didn't know it, yet this night would change the course of his life forever. The hospital corridors were still, humming with low fluorescent light. Ira sat in the chair, jacket folded over his lap, watching as Helena spoke quietly with the doctor. Her back was straight, but her hands trembled. When she returned, her face was pale but composed. "They're admitting her for observation. They'll run another round of tests tomorrow." Her voice was steady, though Ira could hear the strain. "Underneath, you should go home," she added, glancing at him with wary eyes. "You've already done more than enough. I don't even know why you stayed." Ira considered the question himself. Why had he stayed? He had board members to silence, publicists to manage, a world expecting him to strike back at humiliation. Yet here he was, sitting in a hospital with a woman he'd just met, and a little girl who had offered him a cookie. "I stayed because you shouldn't go through this alone," he said finally, "and because I needed to remember what matters outside my world." Helena blinked at him, startled by the candor, then looked away. Most people don't think epilepsy matters until it's their child. She let out a tired laugh, though it held no humor. "I'm used to doing this on my own." That was the first crack in her composure, and Ira leaned into it gently. "Where's Ella's father?" Her jaw tightened. "He left when Ella's seizures started, said it was too much for him. I promised myself I wouldn't beg anyone to stay. So, it's just us. My job barely covers her medication, and when she has episodes like this..." Her words faltered. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough." Ira studied her, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Helena Whitaker, he'd learned her full name from the nurse's chart, wasn't a woman of wealth or power. Her blouse was creased, her shoes scuffed, her hands calloused from long hours. And yet, she radiated a strength that Jemma never possessed, a quiet resilience forged in hardship. "You are enough," Ira said firmly, surprising even himself. "But you don't have to do it alone. Not anymore." Her eyes flicked to his, sharp and skeptical. "What are you saying?" "I have resources," he replied simply. "The best doctors, specialists, facilities. If Ella needs surgery, she'll have access to everything possible. I can make sure of it." Helena shook her head, defensive. "No, you can't do that. It's too much." His voice softened. "It's friendship. I meant it when I said I could use one. And maybe you could too." Silence hung between them for a moment, thick with all the things neither dared to voice. Then Helena nodded, just once, as if conceding that perhaps she didn't have to fight this battle alone. Over the next days, Ira proved his words. He called in favors from renowned neurologists, secured priority appointments, and quietly arranged for Ella's case to be reviewed by the best pediatric epilepsy team in the state. Helena saw the speed with which doors opened under Ira's name. Her was beyond grateful. During their time together, Ira learned Helena had been a teacher before Ella's condition forced her into part-time work. The kind of woman who once dreamed of writing children's books but now spent nights researching seizure triggers. Her family lived states away, supportive but financially strapped, leaving her to carry the weight alone. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, Ira sat across from Helena in the cafeteria. Ella was asleep upstairs, her small body finally at rest. Helena stirred her tea absently. "You don't have to keep doing this," she murmured. "Your world, your company, it must need you." Ira studied her tired face, the shadows under her eyes. "My world," he said quietly, "was built on things that don't last. Maybe it's time I start investing in something that does." For the first time, Helena's guarded expression softened into a true smile. It wasn't dazzling or rehearsed like Jemma's had been. It was simple, real, and in that moment, Ira Beck realized he wasn't just helping Helena and Ella, he was saving himself. Hospitals had always been a place of unease for Ira, the sterile walls he had avoided for most of his life. Yet now, he found himself returning daily, not out of obligation, but out of something he couldn't quite name. Helena had stopped insisting that he didn't need to be there. Somewhere between Ella's first night of observation and the second, a round of test results, she had begun to look for him, not with expectation, but with quiet relief. Ella, meanwhile, had taken to him completely, running into the waiting room each morning with a smile that seemed far too big for her small frame. "Mr. Ira, I saved you a cookie," she announced one afternoon, holding up a napkin bundle as though it were treasure. He crouched to meet her eyes, taking the treat with exaggerated seriousness. "The best cookies in the world," he declared, earning a delighted giggle. Watching them, Helena shook her head, a faint smile curving her lips. "She's adopted you," she said softly, "and I don't think you mind." Ira glanced at her, and for a moment, the steady armor of his composure slipped. No, he didn't mind at all. In fact, he realized with startling clarity this simple connection. The warmth of a child's laughter, the comfort of Helena's presence, meant more to him than all the glittering galas he had endured with Jemma. It was late when Olivia arrived. Ira hadn't told her much, only that he was helping someone. Yet here she was, stepping into the hospital lounge, her sharp eyes scanning the scene before her. Her brother bent slightly as he helped Ella arrange crayons on the table. Helena, exhausted but steady, watching them with quiet gratitude. Olivia approached slowly, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "So," she said, folding her arms, "these are the people who've managed what no one else could. Soften Ira Beck." Helena blinked, startled, then flushed. "Oh, we didn't mean to—" But Olivia waved her off, her attention fixed on her brother. "I've been waiting years to see you look like this, Ira, like a man who remembers there's more to life than mergers and headlines." Ella looked up, curious. "Are you his sister?" "Yes," Olivia said warmly, crouching to the little girl's level. "And who might you be?" "Ella, I gave him a cookie," the child said proudly, as if this act alone explained everything. Olivia chuckled, glancing back at Ira. "Well, brother, I like them. You have my approval. Both of them." The words hit Ira with unexpected force. His sister's approval had always been rare, earned only through relentless achievement. But this, her acceptance of Helena and Ella, felt different. It wasn't about success, it was about family. Helena looked between them, uncertain, then murmured, "You don't even know us." "I know enough," Olivia said gently. "I see the change in him, and that tells me all I need." Later, Ira and Olivia sat together in the quiet lounge. Olivia studied him carefully. "You realize what this is, don't you? What you feel." "For them," Ira exhaled, his gaze drawn to the hallway to the room where Helena and Ella was. "For the first time, yes. What I felt for Jemma, it wasn't love, it was convenience. But this Helena, Ella, it's real. It's grounding." Olivia's hand squeezed his. "Then don't let it slip away." For the first time since his world had shattered, Ira Beck felt something steady, something hopeful, the beginning of love not built on wealth or ambition, but on connection. The world outside the hospital had not forgotten Ira Beck. By the end of the week, his PR team was in a frenzy, his board members restless, and headlines relentless. Beck betrayed. Jemma Whitman's fall from grace. Is the king of commerce losing his crown? Ira had ignored them for as long as he could, choosing instead to remain by Helena and Ella's side. But his silence only fueled speculation. The board demanded his presence, and so, on the morning Ella's surgery date was set, he was forced back into the gleaming towers that had once been his refuge. The conference room was tense when he walked in. 12 men and women sat around the mahogany table, their expressions a mix of impatience and concern. At the head, Ira looked every bit the executive they remembered. Sharp suit, deliberate stride. But inside, his thoughts were still in the hospital, with a child who had pressed a cookie into his hand. Mr. Beck, one of the senior members, began, "The company's stability depends on swift action. The scandal has put us in jeopardy. Investors are nervous. Partners are wavering." Ira listened, but their words felt hollow. Scandal, investors, jeopardy. He had built a career on quelling storms like these, but this time his priorities had shifted. He could no longer pretend his entire world existed within the confines of polished boardrooms. "We will weather this," he said evenly, "as we always do, Draft the statements, secure our allies, let the headlines run their course. They always move on. The board murmured, some relieved, others unconvinced. Ira let them speak, his gaze fixed not on their worried faces, but on the clock. When the meeting finally adjourned, his assistant intercepted him with a hushed tone. "Ms. Whitman is in your office. She insisted." Ira stiffened but did not hesitate. The moment had been inevitable. Jemma stood by his desk, immaculate as ever, though her eyes betrayed sleepless nights. "Ira," she began, her voice honeyed with desperation, "you've been avoiding me. We need to talk. You can't let this us fall apart because of one mistake." "One mistake? This has been going on for over a year." Ira's voice was ice. He moved closer, setting the investigative report between them. "You think it was just one?" Her composure faltered as she scanned the pages, names, dates, photographs. "Save it," he cut in. "Whatever we had, it was a performance. For the board, for the cameras, maybe even for ourselves. But it wasn't love. Not for you, not for me." Her painted lips parted, searching for words, but none came. Ira's silence was final. For the first time, Jemma realized she had lost not just his trust, but his place in her future. Leaving her speechless in the office, all Ira could think about was Helena's voice earlier that morning, trembling as she spoke with the doctor. "They've set the date, next Friday. Ella's surgery." The words echoed in him with a weight no scandal could rival. By the time he returned to the hospital, Ella was coloring in her bed, crayons scattered across her lap. She beamed at him as though he had been gone for days, not hours. "You came back." "Of course I did," Ira said, settling into the chair beside her. "Where else would I be?" Helena looked up from her paperwork, relief softening her tired eyes. "Rough day." "Not anymore," Ira replied. And for once, he meant it. As Ella chatted about her drawing, Ira felt the tension of boardrooms and betrayals dissolve. The Empire could wait. The call came in the middle of a meeting. Ira was seated at the long boardroom table, listening to projections and strategies he could hardly bring himself to care about when his phone vibrated. Helena's name lit the screen. He almost silenced it until he saw it ring again. And again, he excused himself without explanation, stepping into the hallway before answering. Her voice was raw with terror. "Ira, it's Ella. She had another seizure, the worst one yet. She's not waking properly, she's so pale. Please, I don't know what to do." The sound of her sobs shattered him. Ira didn't think, didn't calculate. He was already moving, striding toward the elevators. "I'm coming. Hold on, Helena. I'll be there." The meeting, the board, the Empire, none of it mattered. He left it all behind, his driver barely catching up as Ira barked for the hospital. His chest was tight, his pulse thundering, a kind of fear he had never known tearing at him. Not even Gemma's betrayal had undone him like this. When he burst into the hospital room, Helena was hunched over Ella's small body, tears streaking her face. Ella lay limp against the pillows, her skin clammy, her breaths shallow. "She won't open. Her eyes," Helena choked out. "She's so drained, Ira. What if she doesn't come back this time?" Ira was at her side instantly, kneeling so his face was level with Ella's. He brushed a strand of hair from her damp forehead, his own hands trembling. "She's a fighter," he said softly, though his voice shook. "She's stronger than we know, and she's not alone." Helena clutched his sleeve, her entire frame trembling. "I can't lose her. She's all I have." "You're not alone," Ira whispered. "Not anymore." The medical team, voices clipped and efficient, Ira guided Helena back, keeping her steady as doctors worked. Every second stretched like an eternity until at last a nurse nodded. "She's stabilizing, exhausted, but stable." Helena collapsed, into Ira's arms, sobbing into his chest. He held her tightly, staring down at the fragile child who had somehow become the center of his world. In that moment, Ira Beck realized just how much he had to lose now. The morning of Ella's surgery arrived heavy with tension. Helena barely slept the night before, pacing the hospital room in silence, her hands wringing together until her knuckles turned white. Every beep of the monitors, every whisper of nurses outside the door, only deepened her fear. Ira was there. When dawn broke, his presence quiet but solid. He brought coffee she barely touched, reassurances she hardly heard. Still, he stayed, watching over both mother and daughter, as though it was his own life about to be carved open on the table. When the surgical team came to wheel Ella away, Helena clung to her daughter's small hand until the very last moment. "Mommy will be right here," she whispered, her voice breaking. Ella managed the faintest smile before disappearing through the operating doors. The hours that followed stretched into an eternity. Helena sat rigid in the waiting area, her nails digging into her palms, her breathing shallow. At one point, she buried her face in her hands. "What if she doesn't make it?" she whispered. "She will," Ira said firmly, sitting beside her. His hand covered hers, grounding her trembling fingers. "She's strong, and you're strong. I believe in her, Helena. I believe in both of you." She turned toward him then, tears brimming. "How can you be so calm?" "I'm not," he admitted softly. "But I know one thing. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone." When the surgeon finally emerged, the world seemed to stop. Helena rose on unsteady legs, bracing herself for the worst. But the doctor's words came as a lifeline. "The surgery was successful. She's in recovery. There will be more steps ahead. But today we won." Helena crumpled, tears spilling freely. Ira caught her, holding her against him as relief flooded through her body. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe. Later, in the recovery room, they stood by Ella's bed. Her small body was pale, but her chest rose and fell steadily. Helena brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead, whispering her thanks in broken fragments. Ira waited until the room was still before speaking. "Helena," he said quietly, "come stay with me, both of you, until Ella is stronger, until you've had time to rebuild your life." Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "Ira, I can't. That's too much. You've already done—" "This isn't about charity," he interrupted, stepping closer. His gaze held hers with unflinching sincerity. "You've been carrying this burden alone for too long. You need rest, you need a break, and Ella needs stability. Let me help. Not as the man with resources, not as the businessman, but as someone who cares." "A lot." Helena's throat tightened. "I don't want to be a responsibility you feel obligated to take on." "You're not an obligation," Ira said firmly. "You and Ella, you've become something real in my life. I don't want to stand on the sidelines. Please let me be there." Her lips parted, but no words came. Finally, she whispered, "I need time to think about it." Ira nodded, accepting her hesitation. "Take all the time you need. Just know the offer stands." Helena looked down at Ella, then back at Ira. For the first time, the walls she had built around her heart wavered, and though she said nothing more, Ira saw the possibility flicker in her eyes, the beginning of a future neither of them had expected. The days after Ella's surgery were both a blessing and a test. Relief had come with the doctor's words, successful, but recovery was slow. Helena never left her daughter's side. She sat by Ella's bed in the pediatric ward, reading stories, smoothing hair back from her forehead, whispering encouragement even when Ella slept. Ira visited every day, steady, patient, unshakable. Helena couldn't deny how much it meant, and yet his offer haunted her. "Come stay with me, both of you." She replayed the words at night when exhaustion wouldn't let her sleep. Part of her longed to say yes, to stop carrying the weight of hospital. Bills, late rent, missed work shifts, an endless fear alone. Yet another part of her bristled. She had built her life on self-reliance, on never needing anyone, not after Ella's father abandoned them, not after family support proved too far and too thin. Accepting Ira's help felt dangerously close to surrender. Olivia arrived at the hospital again. She carried coffee and her usual confidence, her presence filling the small room as though she had always belonged there. "You look like you haven't slept in a year," Olivia said, handing Helena the cup before taking the chair opposite her. I can't sleep," Helena admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I worry the monitors will start beeping, that something will go wrong." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "And then there's Ira's offer." Olivia's eyes sharpened. "He asked you already?" Helena nodded. "He wants us to move in with him, just until Ella is better. He says it's not charity, but I don't know. I've been on my own for so long. Depending on someone, it scares me." Olivia leaned forward, her tone gentle but firm. "I've known my brother my whole life. He's built walls so high even I couldn't climb them. But you and Ella, you've changed him. He's softer, real. For him, this isn't obligation. It's a choice. And believe me, Ira Beck doesn't do anything he doesn't want to." Helena stared down at her hands, twisting the paper cup. "I just don't want to uproot Ella. She needs stability, not more change." "Exactly," Olivia said. "And that's what Ira's offering. Stability. A home where you don't have to fight every single battle alone. Say yes, Helena. You deserve it. Ella deserves it." Helena wanted to believe her. Still, the decision gnawed at her until finally, on the 5th day, when the doctor gave the blessed news that Ella could be discharged, Helena made up her mind. They left the hospital with Ella wrapped in a soft blanket, her small hand clutching the stuffed bear Ira had given her. Helena loaded her into the back seat, heart pounding as Ira closed the car door. "Where to?" the driver asked. Helena swallowed hard, then met Ira's gaze. His eyes were steady, waiting, but never pressuring. "To your place," she said quietly. Ira's expression softened, with something that looked almost like relief. He reached over, gently covering her hand with his. "Thank you," he said simply. "You won't regret it." The ride to his penthouse felt surreal. Helena had only ever glimpsed his world from a distance. The sleek glass towers, the private elevators, the kind of luxury she'd never imagined living inside. Ella, still weak but curious, perked up as they stepped into the vast apartment. "It's so big," she whispered, clutching her bear. "Mummy, do people really live here?" Helena managed a small laugh. "Apparently they do." Ira crouched down to Ella's level. "This is your home for as long as you need it. We'll make sure you're comfortable, all right?" Ella nodded solemnly, then smiled. "Can I have my cookies here too?" "You can have anything you want here," Ira promised. Helena stood back, watching the exchange with a swell of emotions she couldn't name. Gratitude, certainly, relief, but also something more dangerous, something that felt dangerously close to hope. That night, after Ella was settled in the guest room, Helena lingered in the kitchen with Ira. "You've given us more than I can ever repay," she said softly. "This isn't about repayment," Ira replied. "This is about starting again, for both of us." Helena's breath caught. She wanted to tell him how much that meant, how much she feared letting it mean too much. Instead, she only nodded, letting the silence speak what words could not. For the first time in years, Helena felt like she wasn't standing on shifting ground. And for Ira Beck, the man who once thought love was a performance, the feeling growing in his chest was undeniable. This, Helena and Ella, was real. The first nights in Ira's penthouse felt like stepping into another world. Helena had expected to feel out of place among the polished marble floors and sweeping skyline views, but Ira had gone out of his way to make the space feel warmer. He moved meetings to be home for dinner. He stocked the kitchen with Helena's favorite teas and Ella's favorite cereal. For a man who had lived by structure and performance, the change was startling. Ella, recovering from surgery, filled the once silent apartment with new life. Her laughter echoed through the halls, her crayons left behind on the dining table, her teddy bear resting against the couch cushions. For Ira, these signs of disorder didn't irritate him. They grounded him. He found himself looking forward to her squeaky footsteps padding across the floor, to her delighted squeals when he returned from the office. Helena, though, wrestled with unease. She cooked in his gleaming kitchen, folded laundry in rooms with more space than her entire apartment, but sometimes she would stop mid-task, staring out the window at the glittering city and whisper, "We don't belong here." Ira noticed. One evening, after Ella had gone to bed, he found Helena standing by the balcony doors, arms wrapped around herself. "You belong here as much as I do," he said quietly. She turned, her eyes guarded. "Ira, this isn't my world. I don't want to lose myself or Ella in all of this." "You won't," he promised, "because this is about you, about her, about us." Her breath caught at the last word. She didn't respond, but the wall between them cracked just a little. But outside their cocoon, trouble brewed. Jemma had seen the headlines. Beck opens home to mother and child. The gossip columns buzzed, whispering about replacements and redemption. Arcs. Her fury burned hotter with every article. Ira hadn't just walked away. He was building something new in plain view of the world. She called him late one night, her voice silky and cutting. "So this is your revenge, parading some school teacher and her sick child as if they can replace me?" Ira's tone was ice. "This isn't about you, Jemma. Not anymore." "You'll regret this," she spat before hanging up. For the first time, her threats rang hollow. Ira realized her power over him was gone. The days stretched into a rhythm. Helena managed Ella's recovery while Ira balanced work and home, often blurring the line between both. He would come home, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, ready to help Helena with dinner or read Ella a bedtime story. One night, after Ella had finally fallen asleep, Helena sat at the kitchen table, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the pendant lights. Ira joined her with 2 glasses of wine. "You've done so much," she murmured, her eyes lowered. "Sometimes I don't know how to thank you." "Don't," he said gently. "Being here with you both, it doesn't feel like something I'm giving. It feels like something I've been given." The quiet between them grew charged. Helena looked up, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment neither moved. The city sparkled beyond the windows, but all Ira could see was her strength, her vulnerability, the way she had reshaped his world without trying. Slowly, he reached across the table, brushing his fingers over hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned closer, her lips parting as though to speak, but no words came. And then Ira kissed her. Softly at first, hesitant, as if afraid she might retreat. But Helena didn't. She let the kiss linger, her hand rising to rest against his jaw, her body leaning into his with a tenderness that felt both terrifying and right. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Helena's eyes shimmered with uncertainty. "Ira, you don't have to say anything," he whispered. "I just needed you to know how I feel." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of the city. Then Helena gave a small, trembling smile. "It's been a long time since I felt something real." Ira's chest tightened, but in the best way. He knew then that whatever battles lay ahead, with Jemma, with the board, with the world, he would fight them. For this, for Helena, for Ella, for love that finally felt true. For a few weeks, life settled into something almost normal. Helena learned how to move through the sleek, intimidating halls of Ira's penthouse, finding small ways to make it feel like home. Ella's drawings taped to the refrigerator, the scent of her grandmother's soup simmering on the stove. Ira, for his part, returned each evening not to silence but to warmth. Their kiss had changed things, subtle, quiet changes, but changes nonetheless. They spoke more softly to each other now, their words carrying weight beyond necessity. Helena would linger when she handed him a dish, her fingers brushing his. Ira would pause just a moment too long when their eyes met, his steady gaze saying more than he dared to speak. They hadn't talked about what it meant, not yet. But the air between them was charged with possibility. Yet peace, Ira knew, was always temporary. The first blow came in the form of a glossy magazine cover. Betrayed billionaire rebounds with single mother, charity or true love. The article dripped with insinuations, painting Helena as an opportunist clinging to Ira's wealth, her daughter as a tragic prop. The photos, grainy, invasive, shots of them leaving the hospital, of Ella clutching Ira's hand, cut Helena to the core. She sat at the kitchen table that morning, the magazine spread open before her, her face pale with fury and shame. "They're calling me a gold digger," she whispered. "They're saying Ella's just a story to make you look good." Ira tore the magazine in half with a sharp motion. "Trash," he said flatly. "Jemma's fingerprints are all over this. She's trying to discredit you, to make you doubt yourself, to make me doubt you. But she'll fail." Helena's hands trembled as she closed the torn pages. "I didn't sign up for this world, Ira. I don't know if I'm strong enough to raise Ella under that kind of scrutiny." He reached across the table, catching her hands. "You don't have to be strong alone. I'll protect you both, whatever it takes." His conviction steadied her, but later that night, after Ella was tucked into bed, Helena confessed her deepest fear. "I don't want Ella to see me as weak. I've fought for her since the day she was born, and now I feel like I've put her in a spotlight she never asked for." Ira cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away the tears she tried to hide. "Helena, don't ever mistake vulnerability for weakness. You're the strongest woman I've ever known. And Ella will grow up knowing her mother fought for her, with everything she had, and wasn't afraid to accept help when she needed it. That's not weakness, that's courage." The words unraveled something in her. She leaned into him, their lips meeting again, this time deeper, less hesitant. It wasn't just comfort, it was need. It was acknowledgement. And when they broke apart, breathless, Helena whispered, "You terrify me, Ira Beck." He smiled softly. "Good, because you terrify me too." But Jemma was far from finished. 2 days later, at a high-profile charity gala, she staged her attack. She arrived arm in arm with John Voss, the man whose kiss had shattered everything, and made sure the cameras caught her every move. Reporters swarmed, and her voice carried across the room as she declared, "Ira Beck is parading a pity project to distract from his humiliation. Helena Whitaker is nothing but a passing distraction. We all know where Ira's heart truly lies, with me." The headlines the next morning were merciless. Helena found herself thrust back into the center of gossip, her name paired with Jemma's in every column. Ella's photo, taken without permission, was splashed across feeds under cruel captions. Helena tried to hide the magazine clippings, the news alerts, but Ira noticed her silence growing heavier, her smiles more forced. "One night," she confessed, what was clawing at her heart. "Maybe she's right," Helena said bitterly. "Maybe I am just a distraction. Your world is polished and powerful, Ira. Mine is small and messy. I don't know if they can ever fit together." Ira's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his voice low but unyielding. "Listen to me, Helena. What I felt with Jemma was hollow. It looked like love, but it wasn't. What I feel with you, with Ella, it's real. No magazine headline, no ex-fiancé, no scandal can take that from me, or from us." Helena searched his face, desperate for certainty, and in his eyes she found it unshakable, immovable. For the first time since their kiss, she let herself believe. Helena sat on the edge of Ella's bed, brushing her daughter's curls back as the city lights blinked beyond the window. Ella's recovery was steady, but the world outside their safe cocoon had grown loud again. Magazines, tabloids, and gossip channels chewing on every detail of their lives. Helena hated that Ella might see or hear the cruelty. "Sweetheart," Helena began softly, "there's something we need to talk about. You know how Ira has been with us every day since the picnic?" Ella's eyes lit up immediately. "Of course. He reads me stories and eats cookies with me, and he carries me when I'm tired." Helena smiled faintly. "Yes, he does. Ira has become very important to me. I like him a lot. But there are people saying bad things about us. They don't want to see Ira happy, and sometimes they write mean things in magazines." Ella wrinkled her nose. "That's silly." Helena let out a shaky laugh. "I wish it was silly, but words can hurt. And I need you to know, no matter what they say, it doesn't change how much Ira cares. For us." Ella sat up straighter, her little face earnest. "It's okay, Mommy. Ira loves us. That's all that matters." Helena blinked, her throat tightening. "How do you know he loves us, baby?" Ella rolled her eyes, as though the answer were obvious. "Because he's been with us every single day since the picnic. He stayed in the hospital, and now we live with him. What else would you call that?" Tears stung Helena's eyes. She bent down and kissed her daughter's forehead. "You're wiser than I'll ever be, Ella." Days later, Ira faced the press. He had kept silent long enough, but Jemma's theatrics and the media's cruelty toward Helena and Ella could not continue unchecked. If he was going to protect them, he had to do it openly. The ballroom was crowded with reporters, cameras flashing as he stepped up to the podium. Jemma had planted herself in the front row, John Voss at her side, her smirk daring him to deny her version of the story. Ira's voice was calm, but every word carried steel. "For weeks, my personal life has been used as entertainment. Rumors have been spread, names dragged through the mud. Let me be clear, Helena Whitaker and her daughter Ella are not a distraction, not a charity case, not a pity project. They are my family." The room rippled with gasps, shutters snapping in rapid fire. Jemma shot to her feet. "Family?" she spat, her voice rising above the crowd. "She's nothing but enough." Ira's command silenced the room. His gaze cut to her, unwavering. "You had your chance, Jemma. You chose deceit. Don't you dare disrespect the people who have shown me what love truly is." The audience stirred, reporters whispering furiously. But before Ira could continue, a small voice piped up from the side of the stage. Ella. She had slipped free from Helena's hand and climbed the few steps to stand beside Ira, her tiny chin lifted with determination. "He is our family," she shouted, her voice carrying across the room. "He's the best dad ever." The crowd erupted, some with laughter, some with awe, but every camera lens locked onto the moment. Ira bent down, scooping Ella into his arms as she planted a kiss on his cheek. He hugged her tightly, his composure breaking into a genuine smile. "And I'm the luckiest man in the world," he whispered, though the microphones caught it, sending the room into a frenzy. Helena stood frozen at the edge of the stage, her jaw and pressed to her mouth, overwhelmed. Ira extended his free arm, beckoning her forward. For a heartbeat, she hesitated. Then she climbed onto the stage, taking her place beside him. Ira's voice rang out one final time. "This is my family. Say what you want about me, but don't ever again question them." The press surged, but the narrative had already shifted. Where there had been scandal, now there was a story of redemption, of love, of a man once betrayed finding something real. Helena slipped her hand into his, their fingers intertwining as Ella rested her head against his shoulder. For once, the flashing cameras didn't feel invasive. They felt like witnesses to a truth too powerful to be denied. And as the headlines rolled out the next day, the world no longer spoke of betrayal. They spoke of Ira Beck, the untouchable tycoon, who had finally found something worth being vulnerable for. The apartment felt different that night. Ira's penthouse was a calm, almost sacred quiet. Helena tucked Ella into bed, the little girl already half asleep from the whirlwind of the day. Reporters, cameras, flashing lights, all of it had been too much for a child, and yet Ella had emerged smiling, unshaken. When Helena leaned down to kiss her daughter's forehead, Ella mumbled drowsily, "He really is the best dad ever." Her small fingers curled around her teddy bear, and within seconds, she was breathing evenly. Helena froze, her throat tightening. She smoothed the blanket over Ella's shoulders, tears welling in her eyes. Best dad ever. The words were innocent, but they carried a truth Helena couldn't ignore. Ira had stepped into roles no one had asked of him and fulfilled them without hesitation. And Ella, her Ella, saw him not as a temporary protector, but as something permanent. When she left the bedroom, she found Ira waiting in the hall, his jacket discarded, tie loosened. His expression was unreadable until she whispered, "She called you her dad." His lips curved, but his eyes softened with something deeper than pride. "I heard." "She meant it," Helena said, her voice catching. "You've only been in our lives a short time, but to her you're already—" She broke off, unable to find words. Ira stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "Helena, I don't take that lightly." They moved into the living room, sitting side by side on the couch. Helena wrapped her arms around herself, staring at the skyline. "Today was overwhelming. I don't know how you did it. Standing up there, saying those things, declaring us your family in front of the world. Ira, the entire city will talk about us now. I don't care what they say," he replied, his voice steady. "They've been talking for weeks, twisting stories, dragging your name through the mud. Today, I took that away from them. They'll still write their headlines, but now it's on my terms. And I meant every word. You and Ella are my family." Helena turned to him, her chest tight with conflicting emotions. "But family, real family, comes with responsibility, with permanence. Are you sure you're ready for that? This isn't like a merger you can walk away from when the deal sours." Ira's gaze didn't waver. "I've built empires and lost sleep over contracts, but none of it ever felt like this. Being with you and Ella, it's the first time I've wanted something I can't measure in profits or control with power. I don't want temporary, Helena. Not with you. Not with her." Her breath caught. He meant it, every word. Later that evening, after Helena retreated to her room, Ira sat alone in the study. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, but barely touched it, his thoughts far from the amber liquid. His mind replayed the press conference, Jemma's venom, the flashes of cameras, and then Ella's small voice cutting through it all. "He's the best dad ever." The words had struck him harder than any boardroom victory. For years, he had believed love was a distraction, something to be displayed but never lived. But Ella's faith in him, Helena's trust despite her fears, it was changing him in ways he hadn't thought possible. A bold, terrifying thought formed in his mind. What if I gave them more than protection? What if I gave them permanence? The idea of marriage, something he had once viewed as a contract of convenience, now carried weight. He could see it. Helena walking toward him not under a spotlight of scrutiny, but under vows of choice. Ella bouncing with joy, calling him dad, not just out of affection, but with truth. He wasn't ready to speak it aloud, not yet. But for the first time, Ira Beck wanted forever. Meanwhile, Helena lay awake in her room, staring at the ceiling. She thought of how Ella had looked at Ira today, pure adoration shining in her eyes. She thought of Ira standing tall against Jemma, shielding them with his words and his presence. And she thought of his hands, steady on hers when he had whispered, "You're my family." It terrified her how much she wanted to believe him, how much she already did, But as exhaustion finally pulled her into sleep, she couldn't deny the truth. Ira wasn't just in their lives anymore. He was part of them. And Helena Whitaker, who had spent years surviving alone, realized she might be ready, someday soon, to stop surviving and start living. With him. With Ella. With love. The days following, Ira's public stand were calmer on the surface. But beneath, his heart had shifted into new territory. He had made his declaration to the world, but there was still one vow left unspoken, one he longed to make directly to Helena. Late one evening, Ira sat in his study with Olivia. A velvet box rested unopened on the desk between them. "She's not ready," Ira admitted, his fingers brushing the edges of the box. "Not yet. She still doubts whether she belongs in my world. But I know what I want. For the first time in my life, I want permanence. I want them, both of them, forever." Olivia leaned back, a knowing smile on her face. "Then don't rush her. Proposals aren't business deals. You've got to show her she belongs before you ask her to promise it." Ira nodded slowly. "I'll wait, but I'll be ready." But while Ira planned quietly, Jemma plotted loudly. Her latest stunt was not another magazine leak or public appearance. This time, she moved to weaponize the very empire Ira had built. Rumors began to swirl in boardrooms and investor circles. Whispers of impropriety, of Helena influencing company decisions, of Ira growing reckless and distracted. It was Jemma's style to claw back power by undermining the very foundation of his reputation. One morning, a business journal ran a front-page headline, "Beck losing control, sources cite influence of new companion." When Ira slammed his phone onto his desk, his fury was uncharacteristic. "She won't stop until she ruins Helena, until she poisons everything I've built." That evening, he summoned Jemma to his office. She arrived dressed to perfection, her smug expression a mask of victory. "Ira," she purred, "it's not too late. Walk away from your little experiment, return to the life we had, and I can make all this noise disappear." Ira's eyes narrowed. He slid the thick folder across the desk toward her. "Do you remember what this is?" Gemma's smile faltered as she flipped the pages. Photographs, receipts, names. A full investigation of her affairs, documented in precise detail. "You thought you could humiliate me, Jemma. But you forget, I don't play games I can't win. If you continue to harass Helena and Ella, if you so much as speak their names to the press again, I will release all of this. Every affair, every transaction, every betrayal." Her face blanched. "You wouldn't dare." Ira leaned forward, his voice low and unyielding. "Try me. You ruined your reputation the moment you betrayed me. Don't make me ruin what little remains." For once, Jemma had no clever retort. She snapped the folder shut, fury burning in her eyes, but Ira had already dismissed her. "This is your only warning. Stay out of my life. Stay away from my family." The word hung in the air, family, and Jemma flinched as though struck. She turned on her heel and left without another word. That night, Ira returned to the penthouse, where Helena was reading on the couch while Ella doodled nearby. The sight of them, ordinary, unguarded, real, dissolved the last of his anger. "Long day?" Helena asked softly, closing her book. Ira sat beside her, his hand brushing against hers. "Long? But it's over now." She studied him, sensing something unspoken beneath his calm. "You've been carrying too much on your own again. You don't always have to." Her words cut deeper than she knew. Ira wanted to tell her everything, about the folder, the threat, the ring waiting in his study, but he held back. Not yet. She wasn't ready. Instead, he reached down and lifted Ella onto his lap. She giggled, looping her arms around his neck. "You're home," she chirped. "I'm home," Ira echoed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. And as Helena watched, her heart caught at how natural the picture was. Her daughter curled against Ira, his arm resting across the back of the couch, where her own shoulder leaned. In that moment, Ira's resolve hardened. Whatever Jemma tried, next whatever the world demanded of him, he would protect this. He would protect them. And when the time was right, he would give Helena and Ella more than just his protection. He would give them forever. The months that followed were blissfully quiet. Jemma, stripped of her power and her pride, vanished from their lives. For the first time in months, Ira was able to breathe freely, unburdened by her shadow. His focus shifted entirely to Helena and Ella, to the fragile but beautiful life they were building together. It was Ira who first encouraged Helena to return to teaching. "You've given so much to Ella, but the world deserves your gifts too," he told her one evening. "You don't have to return to a classroom. You can make your own path." And she did. Helena began homeschooling children whose health kept them from traditional classrooms, weaving lessons with compassion and patience. Watching her work lit something inside Ira. She was radiant in her element, her heart extending beyond her own family to embrace others. He fell deeper in love with her every day. They spent the year learning each other's rhythms. Helena discovered that Ira's stern composure hid a quiet humor. Ella revealed his softest side, coaxing laughter that Helena had never heard before. Ira learned that Helena's strength wasn't loud, it was steady, unyielding, and it inspired him to be better. Together, they grew from survival into something resembling wholeness. When the anniversary of their first picnic arrived, Ira suggested they return to the park. Helena smiled at the idea, remembering Ella's cookie-stained hands pulling Ira toward her all those months ago. Now Ella skipped along the grass, with energy restored, her laughter brighter than the summer sun. They spread out a blanket, unpacking sandwiches and fruit. Helena's eyes caught Ira's as they sat together, their daughter chasing butterflies nearby. "It feels like a lifetime ago," she whispered. "A lifetime," he said softly. When the meal was finished and Ella lay on the blanket drawing flowers in her notebook, Ira rose to his feet. Helena looked up, startled, as he reached into his pocket and lowered himself onto one knee, her breath caught. "Ira." "Helena Whitaker," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "The day Ella offered me a cookie was the day my life changed. You gave me more than friendship, more than love. You gave me a family. I never knew what it meant to truly live until you and Ella. And I don't ever want to live without you again." He opened the velvet box. The diamond caught the sunlight, but Helena only saw him, his earnest eyes, his heart laid bare. "Will you marry me?" Tears spilled freely as Helena nodded, unable to find words. "Yes," she whispered at last. Ella squealed, leaping into Ira's arms as Helena joined them. Under the same sky where it all began, the three of them embraced. No longer broken, pieces but a family whole. The wedding day dawned clear and golden, as though the universe itself had blessed the occasion. The ceremony was small, intimate, just close friends, colleagues who had stood by Ira, and the families of the children Helena now taught. It was held in a sunlit garden filled with roses and lavender, a place chosen for peace rather than spectacle. Helena, who wore a simple ivory gown, her curls gathered with delicate pearl pins. She carried Ella's hand instead of a bouquet as they walked toward Ira, who stood waiting at the altar in a navy suit, his expression unguarded and filled with awe. They reached him. Ella placed Helena's hand in his with a grin. "Now you're really ours," she whispered, earning a soft laugh from the guests. The vows were spoken quietly, their words intimate but binding. Ira promised to cherish Helena not only in moments of triumph, but in every ordinary day. Helena promised to stand by Ira not as a shadow, but as an equal partner in love and in life. And when they kissed, the applause was warm, unpretentious, filled not with society's approval, but with genuine joy. Life after the wedding settled into a rhythm that felt almost too good to be true. Helena's work grew quickly. Word spread about her gift for homeschooling children with health issues, and parents reached out eagerly. What began with 2 students soon became 6, then 10. Ira surprised her one evening with a fully renovated space, sunny, filled with books and art supplies, designed to give her students a safe haven. "You've built something incredible," he told her as she toured the new classroom with tears in her eyes. "Now the world gets to see the woman I've always known you are." Ella thrived in this new world. Her seizures grew less frequent, her health stronger, and her joy contagious. She loved helping her mother with lessons, often tugging Ira into craft projects or demanding he sit for history class. Ira played along, feigning confusion at math problems, only for Ella to giggle and correct him. Olivia, watching it all unfold, pulled her brother aside one evening at a family dinner. "You've done it," she told him with a smile. "You've finally built something even stronger than your empire." "What's that?" Ira asked, though he already knew. "A family," Olivia said simply. On the anniversary of his proposal, the 3 returned to the park once again, picnic basket in tow. Helena spread out the blanket, Ira poured lemonade, and Ella dashed off to chase butterflies. As the sun dipped low, Helena leaned into Ira's side. "Do you ever think about how it started? One little girl with a cookie." Ira chuckled, kissing her temple. "The best cookie of my life." Helena laughed softly, but her eyes shone with emotion. "Ira, thank you for staying that day, for not walking away." He looked at her, his expression tender. "No, Helena, thank you for pulling me out of a life that looked full but was empty. You and Ella gave me everything I didn't know I needed." Ella came running back then, flinging herself into Ira's lap. "Best picnic ever," she declared. He hugged her close, Helena's hand slipping into his. Together, under the same sky where it all began, they were no longer fragments of separate lives. They were a family, whole, unbreakable, and endlessly loved. And for Ira Beck, once a man of power and pride, that was the greatest victory of all. Hope you enjoyed this wonderful story by Green Tea Tales.